Hey, everybody. Welcome to FF Uncensored. This is episode 3 of 2025.
Ashley is at the boat show currently. And
I'm actually in the frozen tundra. I think it's as cold here as it is there today.
how cold is
I
it?
don't
How
know.
cold? Let's stop right there. How cold is it there right now?
Okay, I'm going to look. I'm going to look. The weather bug, it tells me it's 35 degrees.
We're 29 heat wave.
Oh, that is
So
insane.
there you go.
We have snow on the ground still. The
We
gym's
don't.
closed today. It's weird.
We don't. You closed the gym because no one was coming in, or what?
Yep, no one will come in because it's icy. And then so what happened is we got the snow and it hasn't been above freezing. So now it's like melting and all the clients are worried it's supposed to drop back down to below freezing by the time everyone will finish. And you can't drive on bridges when they're ice.
You just drive slower.
Down here, they don't know how to do that. They know how to drive fast and they know how to slam on their brakes. And you know when it's icy and you slam on your brakes, that's bad. All right. You ready for me to read our article for today?
Yeah. Well, it looks like my mic changed. That's dumb. All right. I'm ready for our article today. I'll have to talk closer to my computer.
All right. So Trevor had sent this article. 20 adults lived in the research hospital for 4 weeks. They ate unprocessed or minimally processed foods for 2 weeks, followed by mainly ultra-processed foods for the next 2 weeks. They were allowed to eat as much as they wanted at each meal. During the 2 weeks on the ultra-processed foods, participants ate about 500 more calories more per day in carbohydrates and fats than they did during the unprocessed food weeks. Not surprisingly, they also gained weight. The study is currently being replicated to a larger sample and further evaluation on the risks of ultra-processed foods consumption. Was that better reading, Trevor?
That was incredible reading.
Okay, thank you.
So the reason this was in one of the Life Extension magazine. It was their most recent one. So I came across it and I'm like, oh, this is really interesting, right? Because this is part of like our philosophy at Functional Fitness, especially when we're working with nutrition clients, is how do we move to a more whole food diet, right? And it's fun to see other data that kind of backs some of that stuff up. And this is stuff that I would say we have known and we've seen other things about, which is why we implement it or why we talk about it with clients. But whenever we're thinking about how to help someone make changes, whether it's nutrition, whether it's fitness, we want to think about how to make it easier, right? And so when we think about weight loss, the core of it is a caloric deficit. So we need to be consuming less calories. So what's easier, right? To try and do that through a whole food diet or to try to do that through an ultra processed food diet? This article would argue a whole food diet, right? Because it's a lot harder to consume more calories, right? If we gave this example, we've given this example before, but think about like if you go to a fast food restaurant, call it McDonald's, and you have like a Big Mac and fries, you can consume a fair amount of food, like a lot of food from a caloric standpoint really quickly. And everyone here listening has been to a fast food joint and felt hungry after you just got done consuming 1,000, 1,200, maybe even 1,500 calories, and you still felt like you needed more. And that kind of plays into this article, right? Where the people that were just allowed to eat as much ultra processed food as they wanted, they ate more because they were hungrier. 500 calories more, which is pretty significant, right?
Well, don't they have a number? Like if you overconsume X amount of calories, that's equivalent to an extra pound.
3,500 is the number there.
But all that takes is they overconsumed by 500 calories a day. So in 2 weeks, that's an extra pound. That's gaining a pound every week is consuming an extra 500. So like the biggest thing is the awareness of what do these ultra processed foods do to your brain too, because I know that in a lot of our programs and a lot of our challenges that we run at FF, there is a lesson about how these foods stimulate your brain. There's also a really great TED Talk on it to trigger you to keep eating, like because of the way they put the fat and the sugar and this and the carbs and all of it together, it actually lights up trigger areas in your brain, similar to drugs like cocaine and stuff, to keep doing it. So it's very easy to just keep eating them because you've lit up this certain pleasure center in your brain.
Right. These foods are engineered for someone to consume a lot of, right? Especially when we start thinking about things like chips and sweets and those kind of things. Like these were engineered. And like our biology hasn't ever experienced this stuff before, right? Like for the vast majority of human existence, we ate relatively whole foods and meats and things that you could grow, kill, pick, yada yada yada, right? And so like these combinations of fat, sugar, salt just didn't exist, right?
Well, and we're not generationally far enough away from the creation of these things for our body to have evolved at this point. We're
Right.
literally talking two, maybe three, if we want to say three generations, but like a lot of this stuff wasn't there when my parents were kids. And if it was, if you guys looked at the foods and the ingredient list on some of the stuff that we have today that we had back then, they still have evolved and changed since then.
Right. So and so we have to be very cognizant of this. You made the point of being aware of what we're doing and aware of what this stuff does, right? And by moving to a more whole food diet, you're naturally going to just consume less calories because you will become full and satiated faster. No one has ever gained weight from eating too many chicken breasts or too much broccoli or too many bananas, right? Because these things have mechanisms like fiber and water that help us feel satiated and full, and we it's hard to overeat these kind of things without processing them in some way, right?
I will say that it is still possible to be on a whole food diet and to be over consuming foods. Like I don't like
It is, but it is much harder.
it is much harder, but like don't think that if you are someone that you switched and you're just going to lose all this weight. I mean, a lot of people do just by changing that they're eating whole foods will naturally cut their calories by like in this case like 500
500
calories a
calories,
day.
right?
But that might still not be enough if you're eating super dense foods like well avocado is a superfood,
Right.
avocado is really high calorie, so there is still some of that, like you can still eat health food and gain weight or you can eat health food and lose weight, like you can do it both ways, but it's also what is the food doing to your body and like the performance of your body as well.
And I mean, with the health foods, right, there are foods like nuts, like avocados, that just are more calorically dense, right? So people have a tendency to overconsume them. But I would challenge someone if you feel like you're overconsuming on nuts, go try and eat unsalted, unroasted almonds and tell me how many nuts you eat, right? Like, I mean, that's like this is a real thing. But if you're eating the planters, salted, roasted, yada yada yada, like you have a much more of a tendency to overeat, right? Like this is like super common. Um, and so like as a species, as humans, we do process most everything. So that's why like we aren't just like eating wheat berries from the wheat plant like in fields. Like it just isn't happening, right? Or even like we're not chasing a chicken and then just like eating it, biting its head off and like just eating fresh chicken, right? It like just doesn't happen. So there is a level of processing. So if someone tells you like they eat like all like they don't eat any processed foods, like there is processing that goes into almost everything that we eat, right? Even like an apple, right? You pick an apple off a tree, like technically there's a little bit of a processing that happens, but that's probably about as close as you get, right? There's very few foods that are not eaten without any level of processing because boiling something, cooking something, like all of that is processing, right? And the reason those are actually really good because it actually makes more of the calories available to our body. If you went on a raw food diet and all you ate was raw food, I guarantee you'd lose weight very quickly. And this isn't
I
like and like you should go do this, but just because of you're not going to eat very many calorically dense foods, maybe you're eating a bunch of avocados or something, but like the amount of energy you're going to need to process all of that raw food is going to go through the roof because you're going to be eating tons of vegetables, tons of fruit. and you got to find a way to get protein in, which would be hard.
All I'm thinking about is how horrible that would be to
It'd be
me.
awful.
Like,
It'd be awful. Did I ever tell you about the time I tried to go vegan?
okay, no, but I think we should save this for a different time, and we can go over because I have also had this theory in my mind, and I have made an attempt. So I think we save this
Well, let's put that in.
for
Let's
another
put that
call.
in there in the time we tried to do stuff that maybe wasn't all the smartsiest. Um, so, kind of going back to this, right? This idea of processing. So, it's a really simple concept that I think pretty much everybody can understand. How do I move away from these ultra processed foods into more whole foods, right? With quotations. And we've done this with challenges in the past. Like we've done the clean and lean, which is simply just for 6 weeks, just don't eat any processed foods. No processed food. Whole foods only, right? Or I should say no ultra processed foods. And people have great results. They lose a ton of weight, they feel better, their energy is better. Mainly because when you're eating whole foods, you'll naturally feel more satiated, more full, and because they're whole foods and contain fiber and contain all of these other things, you're not going to get the same blood sugar rise. You're not going to absorb the same amount of calories, and they just behave differently in our body. So it's always fun when you have data, real data that backs it up. And like this was just an article I wanted to share because it helps just bring to light of how much more. Like this is 500 calories a day, which is may not seem like a lot, but now we go 500 calories every day over the course of a time. And here, let's just take this research out of context a little bit, and let's say that someone was maybe doing both, and maybe they only ate an additional 250 calories a day because they were just doing some ultra processed foods that were increasing their hunger and that kind of stuff. Okay, we're talking about probably a pound every few weeks, maybe a pound a month, but you multiply that over a year, 2 years, 3 years, that's where 20 and 30 pounds come from, right? It doesn't happen fast enough for us to be like, there's a problem. It happens slow enough where it's hard to notice because it's going very slowly.
Well, and I'd like to say that this is a huge reason that we like have always pushed clients to do in-body assessments at the end of every training program or step on the scale on a regular sequence is you're not going to notice the first couple pounds. You're going to notice it and you're going to look up and be like, where did all of this come from? And it didn't happen time after time. It's like you skipped doing in bodies every month for a year and now you've gained that extra weight. Whereas if it went up 2 or 3 pounds in January, maybe you would make some adjustments and some pivots for February. Like if you don't get regular information, like you don't look at anything on the outside, you don't really know. This is why no matter where my clients are in their nutrition or fitness journey and stuff like that, log your food. Like maybe I'm not going to make you weigh and measurement, write it down in a notebook, in your notes pad, take pictures of it. You will start to realize the stuff that you're doing and you're not counting or you're not paying attention to. You've lost that awareness, but your weight is another scale of awareness. Are you aware of what you weigh? Have you measured something? Do
Right.
you have a pair of jeans that you don't put on all summer and then all of a sudden summer happen you December, that's when we put jeans on here. Fall happens and you put on your jeans and you're like, wow, these are really tight. Well, you didn't wear them all summer. You wore nice flowy dresses where everything's a little bit easier to be a little more comfortable in. But like using those scalable things to track where you're at is really important.
It just gives you some insight, which then allows you to correct course, right? If we start to see, we call it the drift, right? Where if you start to drift off course a little bit, right? We take a measurement and see where we're at, and then we just correct. All right, I got to clean few things up. Like maybe my evenings have gotten, maybe I've added alcohol into my evenings again, and one glass turned into three, and so most of the time we just notice like, oh, hey, you know what? Let's clean things up. Let's get back on course, right? Versus even if we're off course by just a little bit, like 1 degree, you multiply that with time, and that then becomes I'm way off course over the course of 6 months, a year. And I don't. There's some kind of cool analogies for this. I don't have any off the top of my head, but there's some stuff around like airplanes, and if you're off by just a degree on where you're going, you end up in a completely different place in the world, just because you're off by potentially a degree. And so that's why we have, you correct course, you get back on course, you get back on course, because it's normal to slide, it's normal to drift. That's just life playing on you a little bit. But if we're not necessarily measuring the things that matter to us, then you just stick your head in the sand, and then you come up 3 years later, and you're not where you want to be. And so it's kind of just like, hey, if there's things that are important to you, you probably should measure them, and then assess your behaviors against that measurement. Because usually, like you know that it's sliding, but you maybe just don't want to come to reality that it's sliding, and so like you just stay away from maybe doing a body comp or something like that. But that reality check is sometimes a good thing to be like, hey, I know my behaviors haven't necessarily been supportive of where I want to go, and so just tighten up a little bit, and then you get back on track, right? And so the people that are the most successful that we've seen are people that are just like constantly, hey, where am I at? I'm letting things slide a little bit. Okay, let's get back on track. Let's tighten it up. Cool. Get back to where I want to go. Awesome. And then I get there and I'm like, oh, I feel so much better. Like this, like, and so you get that kind of positive feedback loop. So, um, yeah, if today's talk gives you anything, hopefully it gives you a little bit of ammunition against trying to reduce our ultra processed food intake as best we can. It's not necessarily going to eliminate it completely, but how can we do a little less of that and a little bit more of the whole food stuff? And you're probably going to set yourself up to be pretty successful from both a health standpoint, a body composition standpoint, all of the above. So
Awesome. We hope this helps, guys. If you need anything, you know where to find us.
that was